Happy New Year, blwyddyn newydd a chi gyd, and let's hope that this year is a bit more positive than last year, and it seems that the vaccination is being rolled out at a pace that we would like probably, or like it to be probably a bit faster in some places. But hopefully this is the beginning of getting back to some form of normality. It's nice to be back in the chamber. First time for about 10 months. I understand there have been a few meetings from the chamber previously, but hopefully this is the first sign of getting back to a form of normality and we'll be able to see each other again at some point. So before we get to the agenda item, can I ask Judith just to give us an update, please, on what the COVID situation is? Thank you, Judith.
Diolch, Leader. Bore da, members. Just a brief update on where we're up to with COVID-19 in Denbighshire and in North Wales more widely. Happy to report, I think, as the Leader just alluded to, that there's cautious optimism that we are now approaching or even indeed past the peak in terms of numbers of infections. Sadly, that doesn't affect the fact that there are still a significant number of residents in our county who are extremely ill with coronavirus in hospital, and I'm sure we're all thinking of them today. Our case rate in Denbighshire is now at 369.7 versus 406 of last week. This is above the Welsh average of 306.1. The highest is Wrexham at 792.2, but I'm happy to report that infection rates are falling across the vast majority of Wales, and that is a really positive picture. The vaccination rollout, as the Leader just referred to, is continuing at pace. So far, 27,000 people have been vaccinated in North Wales, and those are predominantly, in fact, almost exclusively in the very highest risk groups. They're hoping for another 35,000 to be vaccinated this week. And what does that mean? What that does mean, which I think we're all especially pleased about, is that there's now a higher level of protection, of course, for our care homes. Most of our care homes have now been vaccinated, both residents and staff, which is good to see because we're all aware of some of the issues that we've had in Denbighshire recently, and in fact across the whole country, where coronavirus has got into one of our care homes. If I just ask you as members, in terms of the main spread of COVID, it still remains within our communities. So although our rates are falling, although the vaccination rollout is now proceeding, it's up to all of us, I think, to continue to reinforce those really important messages about social distancing, mask wearing, washing your hands and having as few contacts as possible. So the battle against coronavirus continues apace in North Wales, but I think we can be cautiously optimistic that we're now starting to get onto the right side of that curve. Thank you.
Oh, sorry. I forgot that's the first one. Okay, just for you members, just for you to know who's in the chamber today. Sitting in Ann Davis' seat would be Judith. Gary is sitting, I think it's in Tony Thomas's seat, if I remember right. Tony? Rodri is sitting in Joan's seat, and Steve is sitting where he usually does. And I've just been afforded Meirig's seat for this one. So that's all that's in the chamber today. Okay, we'll go on to the agenda.
Can I say a word, please?
Sorry?
Can I say a word, please, Leader, on the COVID?
Is it a question, Brian?
It's not a question. It's just a relevant observation, a very relevant observation on vaccination.
Okay, I don't want to debate on this, but Brian...
No, it won't be a debate. No, it's just it's for the members' benefit that are on this webcast today. I had a phone call very briefly last night from a 93-year-old local Rill lady, Mrs. Williams, who was very distressed that she hadn't heard about her vaccination. I rang her local surgery this morning and they actually gave a vaccination date. She was over the moon when I rang her and told her. The purpose for making the point is, without members being a burden on the vaccine rollout, it's an illustration that you can move things a little bit. Yeah, so I don't want to claim anything here, but Mrs. Williams is absolutely delighted this morning. She's now got her appointment for next week. I think local members can assist. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Members will be aware of the requirement of the Council's Code of Conduct to declare any personal or prejudicial interest in respect of any business to be considered at today's meeting. Such interest should be declared now or as soon as the councillor affected becomes aware that they have a personal or prejudicial interest in the business. All members declaring an interest are required to state clearly what the interest is and to advise whether it's a personal interest or a personal and prejudicial interest as defined in the Code of Conduct. Any member declaring a prejudicial interest is required to leave the chamber for the duration of the business and can take no part in the proceedings. Members with a personal interest only may take part in the debate in any vote. If a personal or personal and prejudicial interest is declared today that has not previously been disclosed and recorded, the councillor concerned will be required to complete and sign a declaration of interest form, which can be provided by the committee staff.
Yeah, Gary, does somebody want to declare an interest at this point? No. Okay. Third agenda item, urgent matters. Any urgent matters? No urgent matters. Agenda item 4, minutes of the meeting held on the 15th of December. First of all, for accuracy, page 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13. For matters arising, page 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13. Will somebody move that they're correct, please?
Happy to move, Chair.
Julian's moved. Someone second that? Mark Young. Okay, thank you. Nobody against. Very good. Agenda item 5, bus emergency scheme. Brian Jones, please. Brian.
Hello. Yeah, thank you, Leader. We do have Peter Daniels with us this morning, the lead officer on the bus transport. The BES, otherwise known as the Bus Emergency Scheme, the report this morning is to introduce the next phase of this BES. And the reason for making the report is to present the wider context and the background and the reasons for seeking the agreement that Denbighshire, along with the other North Wales region authorities, sign up to this scheme. There has been a scheme in place since last August when the North Wales region supported the local bus services and suppliers. What's this morning for the is the second of that we're being asked to sign up to. It's pretty self-explanatory, the report. There is a point at 4.14 in the report which relates to beyond BS2, but that's not actually for today, but it is worth reading that because there is obviously things in the pipeline beyond this bus emergency that we're talking about this morning. The whole system is volatile. You've probably seen in the media with operators experiencing problems with COVID, not only with the people that drive buses, but also in the maintenance areas, and that has some effect on Denbighshire. But we have managed to cope with that, and it is slightly improving the situation. So that's the brief introduction from me. I'd like to ask Peter Daniels if he wants to add any more to that.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I suppose just to add then that authorities are being asked to push this through their cabinets, and that as a result of that, the benefits will be potentially safeguarding services to getting on towards pre-virus levels. And it also provides for the first time a sound legal basis for the additional funding that's flowing through into each of the Welsh authorities. It also offers an element of local authority influence over what were formerly commercial services. And although operators will wish to get back to the status quo as soon as possible, when, for example, the vaccine is fully rolled out and numbers start to build. Until that time, we are acting more in a partnership with operators in trying to determine service levels and so on. The other significant impact for Denbighshire, indeed across the region, is that it provides extra capacity at school times. Members will be aware that at the moment, socially distanced bus services means few people can actually travel on them, that without this additional capacity, children simply wouldn't be getting to school. There are a number of risks, of course, with this. The first risk is that operators may not themselves sign up, and there's still some debate amongst the larger operators throughout Wales, but they're moving very close now to doing so. But the risk for Denbighshire, if we weren't to sign up, would be that we would effectively, I think, be frozen out of the regional process, probably not be able to be in a position to influence bus service levels and be out of step with the other local authorities. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Peter. Okay, that's very clear. Are there any questions or comments from Cabinet members, please?
Leader, can I come in, please?
Yes.
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, thanks for that, Brian and Peter. So if we do sign up, Peter, how would we scrutinise this if there's any issues moving forward? And previously, Peter, you've spoken to me about, I was concerned about people being worried, especially the elderly, of using buses, and you did say there was going to be some work on that, but people are still worried about using bus services, and we know people rely on them, and we all worry about loneliness if people can't get into towns, etc. So is there any work happening on that? Because obviously we want people to feel safe and to use a service. So those 2 points, please, Peter. Talking about.
Thank you. So first of all, then, in terms of scrutiny, the first thing we will need to do is enter into some sort of overarching agreement with Flintshire County Council as the regional lead authority and banker for this level of service. And we are exploring, along with Transport for Wales, means by which we can ensure that there's democratic accountability in all this. We haven't reached that yet, but we do expect to be in that position. And if nothing else, through the lead member, trying to ensure that our needs are met and scrutinised. In terms of the return to bus services, it's actually quite interesting that during the first lockdown from about the end of March till the end of June, I think it would have been, we saw about 10 to 12% passenger levels compared to the position a year previously. We're currently in alert level 4 at the moment, and we're seeing about 23% now of passengers travelling. So for one reason or another, there are certainly more travellers that are more confident to use bus services. Clearly the message at the moment is essential travel only, and so we wouldn't be expecting to see joyriders and others like that. But there is a move among some people to come back to bus services. In terms of cleaning regimes and so on, Arriva, for example, in Rhyl have hired specialist cleaners to undertake their buses, the cleaning on the buses. We know other operators are giving thorough cleans every day. So we're trying to reinforce the message that buses are safe. And things like, of course, the Denbigh and Prestatyn Flex is helping, that you can actually book your space on those buses now, which gives an added level of confidence. And we've seen, again, passenger increase on those services above ordinary levels. I think the Denbigh scheme, for example, is currently on about 70% of its pre-virus level. So clearly there's a role for that sort of thing. It's going to take a time. Bus operators recognise it's going to take a time. They do have plans in place, as do we, and we're confident that other things being equal, of course, we can return to something like normality in the autumn.
Yeah, if I can make a comment on our needs, Mark, a number of months ago now at the regional meetings, I definitely had backing for the emphasis on the rural needs, and it went as far as, and I think I've mentioned this before, but apologies, but it's worth mentioning it again in dispatches. The representatives from Transport for Wales agreed that they could not run rural bus services and to some extent North Wales bus services from their office in Pontypridd, and they were very keen to get on board with us to use our expertise and knowledge, which is definitely there and was demonstrated back in August when funding was allocated out to the bus services then. The region came to the fore, carried out a piece of work in a very short time scale, which showed up to Transport to Wales and Welsh Government representatives that there is the expertise and knowledge to do the job. My station, way above my station, there is discussions going on at the moment, specifically around the rural bus transport elements that need to be in place. So I haven't seen all the finer detail of it. I haven't been in any conversations with it myself, but that gives me a bit of heart that we won't get left behind. As far as bus transport goes in North Wales, in isolation, we've got an opportunity to make the best out of this, because it's not ideal, but you can only work with the tools you got, and I believe that we can. That's what I'm pushing for, and I think I've got the support on my opposite numbers at the regional level and people like Peter Daniels. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Brian, for that assurance. It was something I was going to ask in terms of sometimes, and I fully support the need for a regional approach to providing a more sustainable service and a better dialogue with the operators on a sub-regional, regional approach as well. My concern was about the impact on the rural areas. We know already that those services are difficult to sustain, but the need in the rural areas probably is more important than it's ever been. So I'm pleased to hear that the impact on the rural areas is quite high on the agenda in your discussions, and possibly this might provide an opportunity for a more innovative approach to helping people in rural villages to get to where they need to as well, because we've probably been constrained by the existing arrangements in terms of what we're able to do. So hopefully out of this regional approach, there will be solutions and better solutions for people living in the rural areas. And it seems that that's on the agenda. So appreciate that, Brian. Thank you. Okay, is that the cabinet members?
Sorry, leader, can I just come back?
Yes, Mark.
Yeah, it's just to make sure there's a commitment when we do agree the scrutiny and especially for members to do that we're kept informed on that as it goes forward, please, leader.
Yeah, that's clear. Yeah. Okay, any other questions? Okay, Cabinet's okay with this, yeah? Right. Other members, please. Meirig, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to Brian, first of all, for explaining the meaning of BES in English. It would be very useful if you put the full name, first of all, and that is what Brian did, Councillor Brian Jones. These acronyms are okay for people who know what they're talking about, but when you include them in a report for some councillor like myself, it's very useful to have the full title or the full name, because I take it is the Bus Emergency Service or Bus Emergency Scheme. Also, further on page 36, when you try to find out the meaning of the term, it says, look at recital D, and I can't find that either. So I don't know where, if anybody knows where recycle D is in the report. And my final question, would Richard Minion light himself up? He's like a shadow. I don't know whether you've noticed, because all the lighting is behind him, so we can't see his beautiful face. Thank you, Meirig. I'm not sure whether there's something technical with Richard. I'm sure he will consider what you've just said. I'm also sure, Mary, that I didn't say BES, I did say Bus Emergency Scheme, because that is the title of the report. Apologies, I didn't hear you. I was having some technical difficulties at the time. With regards to your second question, I'm looking towards Gary. I think Recycle D is page 34 in Appendix 3, I think, of the agreement in English. After the names of the parties to the agreement, there's a heading, Background Recital B. Funding provided by Welsh Government. That's Recital B. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No complaints, just a comment to say that I agree what you, leader, have referred to about bus services in rural areas and the ability to be able to scrutinise this scheme. But I welcome the fact that this is going to safeguard the bus services that we've got currently and improve them. So I thank all who have been involved with this. And thank you to Peter and Brian for explaining the scheme to us. Thank you, Emrys.
Glenn, please.
Yes, thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Just on the risks, what risks exist with the proposed approach? The operators themselves, what are their worries at the moment about signing up to this? Why would they not sign up to this straight away? And the second one on the breach of competition, state aid or procurement law. Do we know what those laws are now that we've left the EU? Thank you.
Thank you. Peter, could you answer to those two, please?
I can certainly answer the first, Chair. In terms of operator concerns, I think it very much depends upon the scale of the business and the amount of money you're going to be needing to ensure bus services continue. I think that the two main concerns that operators have at the moment are, first of all, there's a very prescribed profit margin within the bus emergency scheme agreement, and that is set at 2%. And operators currently feel that precludes any future investment, particularly for those areas where the buses themselves are getting older now. So that's the first area. The second area is a natural concern amongst operators, no matter how big or small, where they're operating commercial services, that local authorities and Transport for Wales will be able to influence the services that are being operated. You know, it's quite natural that since 1986, when deregulation occurred, operators have been able to plan their networks themselves, admittedly with a varying degree of encouragement or otherwise from local authorities. So it seems alien to them, I suppose. But the good news is that I suppose, given that we're cycling in and out of lockdown, the importance of the bus emergency scheme is so significant to operators now that even those that were resistant are very much easing. And there are a number of meetings going ahead with operators and Transport for Wales this week, which we hope will then conclude matters. And they, like us, will hopefully then be in a position to sign this agreement. As regards for state aid, I would perhaps defer to Gary, hopefully, if Gary's able to answer that one.
That does look a little bit like a hospital pass, Peter, there so early on in the year, but I'm looking to Gary here to see if there's any light on that question.
Yes, there were draft state aid revocation amendments, EU exit regulations 2020, which were due to come into force at the beginning of the year. I don't know them off by heart. I'm afraid to say, I must confess, but our contract lawyer will know them, and any advice that anybody wants in respect of the detail of the new regulations, then I'm quite happy to ask somebody to provide those outside the meeting.
Really good answer there, Gary. So there is an answer to your question, Glenn.
Thank you.
Good. Graham, please.
Diolch yn fawr. Can I just ask a question about the future, really? I don't don't know if Peter's got any information on this, but there was a disturbing comment in the press last week that people would be very reluctant to go back to using public transport after the virus has finished its course. Does he have any information about what is likely in the future? I know it's difficult to ask that sort of question, but it would be interesting to know if there was any more information there about the future.
Yeah, that is actually very tricky. I suppose the future will be determined by a number of things. Obviously, the speed with which we can climb out of the crisis, but also changing patterns that may now be entrenched. People commuting far fewer times for work, people shopping more online. So yeah, it's a bit of a known quantity, and I suppose that's where the bus emergency scheme is flexible. It recognises that actually bus passenger ridership could increase dramatically. On the other hand, it might be a very steady growth. There will certainly be growth. We saw growth after July onwards to about, I think it was about 60% of the network pre-COVID capacity in some areas. But you know, it's going to take a while to get back to that 100%. And if we don't get back to it, there will inevitably be questions about the balance between public support and commercial revenue on bus revenue that each authority and Transport for Wales will have to debate, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. That's good. Barry, please. Barry Mellor.
Yeah, thanks, leader. Yeah, Peter, you mentioned about operators looking at joining the scheme and looking at 2% profit margin. Is this emergency scheme looking forward and looking at the fewer numbers of people travelling? How does it fit in with climate change, with bus companies looking ahead to look at gas or electric buses? Obviously lower profits. These companies are not going to want to be putting money into these new vehicles.
Yes, that is a definite dilemma. The Welsh Government, before Christmas, or sometime last year, in fact, published a willingness to try and ensure that all buses by 2028 have zero tailpipe emissions. That was before the COVID crisis. They've reinforced that under their Llwybr Newydd Welsh transport strategy document that's out for consultation at the moment. We're struggling with that and trying to reconcile that at this very stage. And I think even were passengers to revert to their normal levels, there will be a struggle to replace over 3,000 buses throughout Wales and to make them either hydrogen or electric vehicle traction. It's an ongoing debate, Barry, one that is certainly tied up with the bus emergency scheme, but we will need additional funding, I think, in order to meet the Welsh Government's aspirations for that. Yeah, average age of the fleet is still across North Wales relatively high, although there are pockets where that has declined, and I'm sure, Barry, you'll be aware of those in particular.
Yep. Okay. Thank you for that, Peter. No more questions? No, nothing from Cabinet. Right. Can you come to recommendation, please, Brian?
Certainly, Leader, yes. So the recommendations 3.1, the Cabinet agrees to the principles of the Bus Emergency Scheme Agreement, Appendix 2, to secure conditional financial support to the bus sector and to establish a relationship with Flintshire County Council as the regional lead authority and signatory that ensures that the ongoing emergency funding meets the authority's priorities and is delivered on its behalf. 3.2, in due course, to call for a further report on bus reform proposals relating to the future management of the bus services in Wales. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. That's been moved. Will someone second that, please? Mark Young, seconded. Is there any Cabinet member against that? No. Okay, that's been moved. Thank you, Brian. Agenda item 6, establishments of Sports North Wales Partnership. Bobby, please first.
Hi, thanks, Leader, and morning to everybody. Yes, this is about Denbighshire's involvement in the new in the establishment of a new Sports Wales partnership across North Wales. This would be done obviously via DLL, and all the other 5 authorities are likely to be signing up to this at a similar time. For those of you who are not aware of Sports Wales, it's the national organisation responsible for increasing participation and improving performance in sport in Wales, and has provided historically annual funding to each local authority and other partners to undertake a number of sporting programmes and interventions across North Wales. Currently, Sport Wales provides separate funding directly to the 6 authorities as partners, which are responsible for spending in their own respective areas. However, if Sports North Wales is approved, the cumulative funding from Sport Wales, estimated at around 2.7 million per annum for the region, will be directed through Sport North Wales, and decisions on priority investment will be undertaken by the Partnership Board with oversight by the Governance Board. The indicative total 5-year funding between 21-22 and 25-26 is around 13.5 million. And it's for community sport, free swimming, lottery, local grant scheme, etc., etc. The funding will be held and administered by Sport Wales, but will be available for Sports North Wales to draw against. Denbighshire Leisure Limited would like to be part of this regional group, and along with the other local authority partners, have representation on the group board. After speaking with Jamie, I gather there are some legal actions to be worked through, which will be undertaken by Gary, and he will explain that to you in a little more detail and sort of slightly alter the recommendations to that effect. Can I also point out in the report, there's a slight, this was done on a template by Gary, and it refers to Wrexham instead of Denbighshire. In the, I can't remember which paragraph it is, I haven't got the report directly in front of me. Whilst I'm on, and as usual, with anything regard to Denbighshire Leisure Limited, I would just like to pay tribute to how they have continued through these very difficult circumstances, with all their facilities being closed, to keep participating with Denbighshire. And the staff have been amazing, the way they have stepped in on all sorts of fronts, you know, helping to keep the building safe, in good condition, whilst we're waiting to restart with our leisure facilities. And other members of the team have volunteered to help in their communities, delivering PPE, cooking for care homes, and for those who are, and also for those who are self-isolating. And I'd just like to pay tribute to how they have kept things going all this time. Gary, would you like to sort of outline what legal aspects there are you'd like to sort of sort out before we sign up to this?
Yeah, thank you, Bobby. Just before I call Gary in, it would be advisable just to declare an interest, being that you've made a statement in your particular role. So it'd be helpful if you just declared an interest on that point.
Yes, all right, sorry, yes, I declare an interest as
That's
chair
it.
of
Okay.
the DLL board. Apologies.
Thank you, Bobby. Okay, Gary, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Bobby. Yes, this report effectively sets out the principles of the Sports North Wales Partnership, but also the terms upon which it will operate. So first of all, I must apologise to everybody about my mistake in paragraph 4.1 of the report. It was a template report that was adopted, and there was some wording that applied to Wrexham that should have been deleted. I thought I deleted it, but obviously my technical skills failed, and I do apologise. In terms of the proposal, Bobby's outlined that this is a new way of distributing the funding that Sport Wales send to the region. And the proposal is that it will be a partnership of 18 members. So the 6 local authorities will be members, BCU will be a member, Public Health Wales will be a member, the 2 universities, Bangor and Glyndŵr, GWE, Disability Sport for Wales, and housing associations, ADRA, North Wales Housing, Wales and West, Cartrefi Conway, Clwyd Allen, and Group Cynefin. The model that's been adopted is a hosted model. So Conway County Borough Council will be the host, and they will be the accountable body. So the money will come from Sport Wales to Conway, who will then distribute it as banker to the local authorities and the various projects that are approved under the processes that will be adopted. The governance of the partnership will be by 2 boards. There will be a governance board, and the only membership on the governance board will be a representative of the 6 local authorities. And that governance board will be responsible for the overall strategic direction of the partnership, for oversight of the other board called the Partnership Board, which I'll come to in a second, and for approving any individual funding for projects which is greater than £50,000. There will then be a Partnership Board, which will be made up of 12 people. There will be 2 local authority representatives on that board, and there will be a representative from health, a representative from the housing sector, a representative from the education sector, and a representative from the equality sector. And there will then be 6 independent people who will be externally recruited by the Partnership Board and the Governance Board to sit on the Partnership Board. The Partnership Board will be responsible for approving projects between in value between 10,000 and 50,000, and they will be responsible for reviewing and monitoring the progress of those projects and for ensuring that those projects are proceeding in line with the strategic objectives of the partnership. There will be 1 post of a regional director, which will be employed by Conway, and that person will be responsible for the operation of the partnership, for supporting the 2 boards, and for the performance of various projects. All other staff who are employed in the activity will remain employed by their individual organisations. There won't be any great cheapy transfer of staff. The funding will be treated in 2 categories. The first category will be local authority funding, and that will be allocated to local authorities in 2 batches. First of all, amounts to cover their fixed costs in respect of the staff who are retained to deliver things like active young people, etc. And then some funding in respect of individual projects. And then there will be a second category of funding which will be allocated to individual projects called collaboration funding, and they will follow the approvals process set out in the inter-authority agreement and will be approved by the different bodies that I've just mentioned. The regional director will also be able to approve spend up to £10,000. The representation of the council on the governance board is a matter that needs to be determined. And the suggestion is that because the expertise in respect of sport and activities that fall under this partnership sits with Denbighshire Leisure Limited, that the representative for the council on the governance board should be a representative from Denbighshire Leisure Limited. We're in a similar position to Flintshire County Council, who have their own leisure company, Aura, and they will be following the same path as us and seeking to appoint someone from their leisure company to represent them on the governance board. Because of the peculiarities of local government law, we can't delegate a function to anyone who's not employed by the council. Therefore, we would be appointing DLL to represent us as our agent. And if there were any decisions that were sufficiently significant that they required ratification, then they would have to come back to the council through its decision-making process to ratify. But the day-to-day operation of the governance board and the project approvals should be something that can be dealt with by that person. In order to ensure good liaison and link back to the authority, regular reports from DLL will be made through the contract management meetings that take place regularly, and also to the Strategic Governance Board, who have also had sight of this proposal. The other thing to mention is that the recommendations currently seek approval in principle to support the Sports North Wales Partnership, with final approval of the inter-authority legal agreement that will have to be entered into by all 18 partners. It was envisaged that we'd be able to do that in 2 steps, support in principle today and approval of the final inter-authority agreement at a later stage. The inter-authority agreement arrived with us at the end of last week, and we're being asked to approve it by the 27th of January because there's going to be a governance board meeting scheduled for that day. So far, the other local authorities, as I understand it, have all approved in principle the partnership and delegated authority to their relevant legal officer or other to agree the final terms of the inter-authority agreement. I've seen the inter-authority agreement, and by and large it follows the heads of terms that are appended to the report in the template appendix. So someone will, if members are happy to support, we can deal with what the wording of the recommendations would be at the end, but essentially it's to support the partnership, it's to approve the appointment of a DLL as the council's agent to represent them on the board, and it's to seek delegated authority to approve the final terms of the legal agreement. Happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you for that, Gary. Okay, any questions from cabinet members, please?
Yep. Leader.
Yes, so.
Can I just declare an interest as well as director of DLLL?
Yeah. Thank you. Okay, are there any questions? Just the point that I would make probably is that the governance, I'm sure, Gary, it's in good hands that it will be clear in terms of the accountability of the aims of the Denbighshire Leisure Company to our own. I think that's important, that we don't lose sight of what we have achieved so far and what we would like to achieve in the future. I think that's for us as members and our residents is something that is not lost in this regional approach, and I'm sure Gary will test out the agreement that allows that to happen. I think that's really a key element for me. The second point I would like to make is, if we do not participate, then we can't influence. I think it's somewhere in the report. There is a risk, isn't there, that our own priorities might be diluted on a regional basis. So that's the way it is, regional working, I'm afraid. And it's important that our representatives on that board highlight our needs, and I'm sure that will be covered in the governance arrangements, which Gary highlighted there. I don't know if you want to respond to that, Gary. Or...
Yeah, well, I suppose what I'd say is that in respect of this activity, or the activity that's funded through this, DLL deliver it for the council. So it's already something that DLL do. They're experienced in doing it, and we have the governance structures in place through the Strategic Governance Board and the contract management for continual dialogue between the company and the council to ensure that everything is going along on that basis. In terms of the regional nature of it, North Wales is very much a pilot. As I understand it, Sport Wales are looking to set up 5 regional partnerships across Wales, and North Wales is the pilot. The initial term of the agreement is for 5 years, and the legal agreement expresses the term in the sense that it will automatically end at the end of 5 years unless everybody agrees to extend it, or before the period of 5 years is up, that everybody agrees to terminate it. So at the end of 5 years, if there's no agreement, it will end.
Right. Okay, that's good. Okay, that's it.
I did see Merrick's hand up. I don't know whether he wants to.
Yes, I'm on the way to Merrick, Bobby. I just wanted to make sure cabinets were comfortable with this. Seems to be no comments from cabinet members. No. Okay. Meirig, please.
Thank you very much once again, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to have a little bit more information about 4.6, about funding and so on. Do we have to provide some funding towards this, or have I misread that? Also, with item 6, in Welsh and in English, on page 97 and 94 in the English, there's reference to Glyndŵr University, Wrexham, but in the English version, it says Glyndŵr without the circumflex on the W. I know it's only a very little thing, but we've got to make sure we've got these things correct. And then on page 107, Appendix 1, we use the English version of the address in Welsh when referring to the offices in Rhuthun. Conwy is in Welsh, Gwynedd and Anglesey are in Welsh, and some of the others, they use their Welsh version. So I don't know, or I don't understand why we don't as Denbighshire. On page 109, there's an acronym CBSC. I just wanted to know what that means. Thank you very much. I'm looking towards Gary. With regards to the funding, my understanding is that the whole budget comes from Sport Wales, and the partnership is just a vehicle for us to use to share and allocate this funding across the region. I don't believe that we are contributing any funding. Conwy's costs to employ the director and run the scheme will come out of money from Sports Wales. With regards to the language and the circumflex on Prifysgol Glyndŵr, I'll apologise for that. As I've said, this was a template and an appendix was prepared by the partnership, so apologies for any deficiencies in the appendices and the report. And the CBC, which page was that one, please? I said page 109. Are we looking at the Welsh? Is that in Welsh? I think you're on mute, Meirig. Apologies. I thought I'd switched it back on. Page 109. Page 9 in the blue pages. They only show a third of the page, and there it refers to CBSC, Regional Director employed by CBSC. It stands for Cyngor Bwrdeistref Sir Conwy, Conwy County Borough Council.
Okay, any other questions on this? No. Okay, Gary, could you remind us of the is it an amendment or just clarity on the first recommendation?
Clarity on
please?
the recommendation. So clearly I can't move any of this, but my suggestion that 3.1 read the Cabinet supports in principle the establishment of the Sport North Wales Partnership and delegates authority to the head of legal, HR and democratic services in consultation with the lead member and the Section 151 officer approval of the final inter-authority agreement. And 3.2 should stay as is, that Denbighshire Leisure Limited be appointed to represent the council on the governance board of the Sport North Wales Partnership, acting as an agent of the council. Okay,
thank you, Gary, for that clarity. Bobby, are you comfortable with those recommendations?
Yes, I'm comfortable with them. I would like to sort of say that we recommend 3.1 as Gary stated if
Yeah.
that's okay, because I'm not quite sure of the actual wording. And 3.2, that Denbighshire Leisure Limited be appointed to represent the council on the governance board of the Sport North Wales Partnership, acting as an agent of the council.
Okay, thank you, Bobby. That's been proposed. Can someone second that, please?
Yeah, I'll second that, Leader.
Okay, thank you, Brian. And cabinet members are clear about the changes to the first recommendation, aren't they? So are there anyone who objects to this? No, so everybody's in agreement. Thank you for that. Thank you, Bobby. Agenda item 7, title Housing, Rent Setting and Housing Revenue and Capital Budgets 21 to 22. Julian, please.
Thank you, Leader. As we're probably all aware by now, it is a requirement upon us to set our budget and corresponding levels of rent before the end of the current financial year for the next financial year. And there are two elements to the report which is in front of you today. The first one dealing with the budget, and the second with the ensuing levels of rent. If I can go to the budget first of all. Those who attend and read my finance reports to Cabinet on a monthly basis will know I report on the current position with regards to the HRA on a monthly basis to Cabinet. And the current forecast outturn figure is around about just under £1.4 million in the current report. We need this obviously to put in place to make sure that we're able to deliver as an authority both our revenue works and the capital programme, both to maintain the Welsh housing quality standard and the new build programme. A couple of items to note which are noted within the report there, that in line with the rest of the authority, the HRA will be facing some significant additional costs moving forward in terms of the carbon zero agenda. And also that from later on this year, due to changes in the legislation, we will now be able to bid alongside RSLs for social housing grant. Also, in Appendix 2, you'll see an excerpt from the housing stock business plan, which we review annually to ensure that it remains deliverable. And you'll see there that for the foreseeable future, we will be at the what we consider to be the minimum safe balance level of £1 million or above. So if we turn to the second element, which is rent, back in 2019, Welsh Government provided a 5-year rent policy, which essentially meant that rents would increase by CPI plus 1%. So for this year, that would equate to an increase of 1.5%. We also have the flexibility to put on up to an additional £2 per week additional charge. But as we've done in the last couple of years, we've not proposing that we actually do that for the forthcoming year. So that would mean that the total increase would be the 1.5%, which equates to an average rent. Obviously, there are difference in properties depending on different numbers of bedrooms and the like. But the average rent would increase to £93.89 per week, which is an increase of £1.38 per week. You may also remember several years ago now that we disaggregated the service charges from the rent figure for transparency for our tenants. And that cost essentially is the actual cost of delivering those services, and we capture those. And I would just reaffirm that only those properties that actually receive those particular services will actually pay for them. So the average charge for that for the forthcoming year will be £2.14 per week, which actually represents a small decrease from the figure last year, as some other costs have decreased. There is a new requirement this year that says that we need to assess what we're proposing against three areas of criteria. That's efficiency, value for money, and affordability. And Appendix 3 to the report has quite a bit of additional benchmarking data to show how we relate to those other authorities that still have housing stock. I'll just pick out a few of those items of data for you. In terms of cost efficiency, we come out as the second lowest. In terms of investment, we're actually the highest investors. That reflects pretty much the work we've done in recent years on void properties before we re-let them, and also the fact that we do have obviously a number of older properties within the housing stock. Value for money is pretty much assessed based on the biannual tenants survey. In terms of the response on that, and in terms of affordability, obviously that will very much vary depending on individual circumstances. However, I would just point out that were we to take a decision, I'm not suggesting that we are, obviously my recommendation is that we don't do this, that were we to consider not making any increase, just to confirm that because there was no methodology to actually claw that back in future years, that would mean a permanent loss to the HRA in terms of income, which would mean then that we would have less funding available either to invest in new build or maintenance work on the existing stock. We've spoken with the Tenants Federation with regards to our proposals, and they entirely understand the position. You'll see again from one of the benchmarking graphs there that in terms of tenant rent arrears, we're actually one of the fourth lowest. Obviously, again, that's slightly historical data, so I'd expect our figures would increase, but then again, I would express other authorities' figures to increase as well. So in terms of a relative position, I would hope that we would actually be able to maintain that. And finally, we're doing quite a lot of work with Citizens Advice in terms of the Key to Advice project to make sure that any tenants that are facing difficulties are provided with the best possible support and advice to get them through that. So I think that's probably all I needed to say. I've got Jeff here. I don't know whether Jeff, you wanted to add to anything, so I missed anything out, or you needed to correct anything.
No, that was fantastic. Thank you, Julie. I'm just happy just to add very briefly before we take any questions that obviously from my point of view, I'm a little bit two-faced, probably not the right word, two-hatted around this. One is very much about the business side of it. You know, this rent increase this year is a little bit lower than what we've been used to in previous years. Increases. We don't really expect inflationary increases to be as low as 0.5% next year. You know, our costs are likely to go up significantly in a lot of areas. But also the other face that I show is, you know, obviously I'm here for our tenants, and the affordability of our tenants is really important. This is the lowest rent increase we've had due to the level of inflation that we've had since I've been back with the council. And obviously that rent increase for the families that are on housing benefit, universal credit, for example, their benefit entitlement will increase to cover that. So the good news is, if there is any good news with an increase, is it is a lower increase, rent increase than normal, and overall service charges, which are also eligible for housing benefit and universal credit housing costs, are decreasing slightly as well. I know it varies from property to property, but overall, you know, it is a better picture than what we've had in the past. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Jeff, for that. Okay, I'll open up for questions to cabinet members, please.
Leader, please.
Mark.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Mark, you've just frozen.
You're breaking up, Mark.
It might be.
Okay, I'll turn my video off. No problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is it better?
Yes,
that's fine. Thanks.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, thanks for that. And I have spoken to the lead member and Jeff about this and touching on the affordability side. So the report's very honest. It talks about why we need to do it, the business case, but I am concerned about the affordability. So if I can just touch on that, and any response to that would be beneficial. So when we talk about affordability within your document, it does talk about the support there, and Jeff just mentioned people getting support. So in the press at the moment is universal credit. I don't want to get into a massive political debate, but it is the debate is over the £1,000 roughly. So if that is removed, £1,000 quite a lot. So how would residents deal with that? You've also talked about the effect maybe on people being able to afford childcare and their work balance. So you've been honest there, but it's down. So I guess I'm talking about the universal credit. The debt for the service is growing slightly, and we know free school meals are increasing. And so although it's a small increase, if your money's tight, it has an impact. So it's the affordability side, especially with the grey area of universal credit. So are we happy that people can afford it? And if there is an issue moving forward, what would we do? Because I understand the business plan, but we are here for our residents, and Jeff wears two hats. So I'm asking the hat about residents and affordability, please.
Okay, Jeff, in response to that?
Yes, it'd be happy for me. Yeah, I mean, obviously, the main thing to remember is if people's universal credit goes up and down, as long as they're still eligible, the rent increase and the service charge increase will be covered by their universal credit. Obviously, from our point of view, the hat that we wear overall, on a day-to-day basis is supporting our tenants. We've been very supportive right throughout the lockdown, for example. We had some peaks with increases in universal credit around March and April. Then we had a further one in November, which is more universal credit cases than we sort of forecast. And that's obviously because of the lockdown. Thankfully, that has stabilised overall, and we do think people are in a slightly more stable position. Like I say, for us, it's really about supporting our tenants as much as we can. We've got a fantastic service with Citizens Advice Bureau, where our staff can't provide advice on budgeting and help. Citizens Advice, that in Appendix 3, there is some extra information on some of the outcomes, which is in the millions of pounds a year of extra support. And the thing to note for me is, of the 7 registered social landlords in Denbighshire providing housing, we've all got the same responsibilities going forward in terms of, the decarbonisation standards are enormous for us potentially, and they've started now. We've already started investing in our stock, but our rents are lowest, and we do think our service is just as good. The product you get from us, try not to dehumanize it, but the home that we provide for people is just as good. It's just as safe, just as secure. The houses, the estates, the communities are just as good, but we are still the lowest average rent of those seven registered social landlords providing social housing. In Wales, out of the 11 councils, we were 5th last year. We've not been submitting data to Welsh Government, unfortunately, due to the COVID situation, but we're expecting to be low, middle to low in terms of the average rent. So overall, we're doing as much as we can on affordability, but the main message for us is, we're giving our tenants as much support as we can. If people are struggling, we're not threatening them with legal action. We're not asking for, big amounts of money to pay arrears back every week. We're just asking people to work with us as much as we can and provide as much support as we can to help people. And like I say, the big thing is, in most cases, in every case where people are already in receipt of universal credit, even if the temporary arrangements end, their housing cost increase will still be covered.
Okay. Yeah, Mark, thanks for that. Jeff?
Leader, can I just add? Yeah,
sure.
Just in terms of the overall position for universal credit, I suppose it's just an information piece. I'm actually taking a paper to community scrutiny on Thursday in relation to the overall council response in terms of universal credit, and obviously that will pick up part of what Jeff's just been through now. And just to confirm, I suppose, because of the COVID situation, as Jeff says, there were no actual target rents provided by Welsh Government this year. In previous reports, I'm sure you'll remember that we reported on our relative positions in relation to essentially what Welsh Government indicated that we probably should be charging. And at last year's figures, we were considerably, for most properties, considerably at the lower end of the scale and quite a considerable distance away from those target rent figures. And because of the comparatively low inflation figure, as Jeff's indicated, we will actually find that more people will probably have come out of the target rent than actually have achieved it this year, this coming year. So I think that does demonstrate that we are providing an excellent service at quite what is essentially a very low cost to our tenants.
Yeah, thank you for that. Okay.
Leader, please.
Yes, Tony.
Yeah. Just to add to what Jeff has been saying is
Tony, we can't hear you very well, Tony. Can I put the screen off, please?
Yeah, we'll do. Yeah, hopefully that is better, Leader.
That sounds better, yeah.
Yep.
We have invested in a package which tends to pick out those residents that are having trouble sooner rather than later. So there's a considerable investment gone into that, which I think is an indicator. And the communication between our housing teams and our residents, I think, is first class. So I think we're doing everything that we can to reassure our tenants. And I think we're doing a very good job on that. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that, Tony.
I've got my hand up.
Sorry, Bobby, I had missed it. Okay, Bobby, please, next then.
Yeah.
Before your hand gets tired, Bobby, you best come in now.
Sorry?
Before your hand gets tired, you best come in now, Bobby.
I appreciate that this is an annual review and that it's a statutory function to set budgets before the commencement of the financial year. And you have obviously made a convincing case as to the need for an increase. But I would suggest the timing of this increase is psychologically rather, or could be psychologically rather damaging, certainly worrying, in the light of the year of hardship caused by the pandemic, with more people than ever before on benefits. I'm just asking, would it be possible to shelve this increase until next year, when hopefully we will be through this crisis and out the other side? And I cross my fingers and touch wood as I say that.
Okay, Bobby. Yes.
Can I get Jeff might want to come in and either give more detail or correct me if I'm wrong on what I'm about to say. I did try and pick it up in my earlier presentation. The legislation does not allow for retrospectively claiming back income that we might not have put on this year. So essentially, if we don't make it this year, all we'll be able to do next year will be the CPI plus the 1%. We could potentially utilise, I suppose, the £2 extra if we were of a mind to do. To try and collect part of that, but then that would put an even bigger increase on our tenants in 1 year rather than spreading it across a 2-year increase. And what it does do would mean that our income obviously would be by quite a considerable figure less for next financial year, which would impact potentially on the viability of the housing stock business plan going forward. Jeff, would that be a fair perception?
Yes, absolutely. And I think, I agree, the welfare of our residents is uppermost in my thoughts. And I think, when I spoke to the Tenants Federation about this before Christmas, I had to draw on a piece of paper, a graph, and basically, if the rent increase normally, certainly in my time back in Denbighshire, has been about 4 or 5%, which is about £800,000 a year to us. This time it's 240,000. That's the value of it every year. But what that means is if we don't increase it by that much this year, we'll be starting from a baseline next year of £240,000 less, and every future year will always be £240,000 less. So within 4 years, we'll have lost £1 million if we just have 1 year of stagnant rent with no increase. So I know this was a big issue in England. When I worked in England, they had rent decrease, and it was a disaster because I know we're lucky in local government that we can predict a business plan where our costs, our income goes up with inflation compared to lots of other businesses. But if you do go up and then you have a stagnant period, it does mean you're starting from a lower base in future, and you never get that money back. So that it's the balancing, to make sure we can continue to invest in the stock, because one of the big things we want to do is we want to reduce people's fuel bills, because we know some of our properties are not fuel efficient enough yet. We're getting there, but we know we've still got a lot of work to do and significant investment. We're talking on average, we're talking about £20,000 a property. If we're going to get all our properties, because they're older stock, 1950s, the majority of them, to get them up to, at least energy rated B, without going into the complex process of that, we have got some significant investment. So that £240,000 this year, and then every year forevermore, is going to be investment that we're not going to be able to invest in our homes. And there's also, the provide services for tenants as well. So whilst I agree with, Councillor Feely, absolutely, we'd love to be able to do this. The only consolation for me is this year, the rent charge is a lot lower than it has been in the past, because inflation is a lot lower. And like Julian says, our rents are below the target rent levels. Welsh Government sets the target rent based on the area. So Denbighshire split up into rent areas. So a 3-bedroom house in Ruthin or a 3-bedroom house in Rhyl would have a certain target rent that all social landlords follow. We've been trying to get to that with our rent increase, but because the rent increase is capped, we can't get anywhere near it. And bizarrely, over the past 4 years, the target rent levels has increased by 11.5%, whilst our rents have only increased by 9%. So we're actually overall getting further and further away from the rent levels, or below, certainly below the rent levels that Welsh Government suggests we should be charging for our properties. So, on that basis, I know if you're paying £92 a week this week rent, and you've got to pay £93 a week next year, that is a big difference for households, but it's still well below what we are suggested that we should be charging.
I appreciate what you're saying, Jeff, and I appreciate everything the service does. I'm not questioning that at all. I'm just questioning at a time when we are spending, the UK as a whole and Wales are spending millions, billions on supporting people through this pandemic. 240,000 is a relatively small amount of money in comparison with that. And I just thought for 1 year only, it could be, show Denbighshire in a good light, if you like, to be shelving that for a year. If you say it's not financially viable, I guess, that I have to live with that, but I felt it was right to ask the question.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I do agree. We've put that in, sorry to come in there, but we have put that in the notice, because we can only, by legislation, increase rent once a year. So it has to be in April time as part of the tenancy agreement. But one of the things we put in the standard notice, we always send a booklet to tenants to say, this is where your money goes, because affordability is really important to us, but efficiency, value for money, and tenants understanding where that money goes is really important to us. But what we've put in is, unfortunately, it's £240,000, but that's every year forevermore, less income that we'll have. So over time, the finance people are saying this is going to be quite a significant loss. So we try to explain that as best as we can in the letter to our tenants, because I understand exactly, what this is going to mean. Like I say, for over 2/3 of our tenants, this is going to be covered by universal credit and housing benefit. So we're not foreseeing any issues, and obviously we'll support the rest as much as we can.
Okay, thanks for that, Bobby. I think you make the point well, but the implications on the service are quite substantial. And there's also, it's very unclear today what the impact on the economy is likely to be within 12 months as well, which could have an even greater impact than it's had now. So I'm comfortable with what Jeff has, how he's responded to your query there in terms of moving forward. Okay, any other cabinet members? No. Okay. Mary, please.
Thank you once again, Mr. Leader. I must agree fully with Councillor Mark Young and Councillor Bobby Feely. It's very sad, of course, that we have got to increase the rent. According to page 125, section 3.2, council houses are there to house families who cannot buy a property or afford private rent. Thank you very much to Jeff for looking after the tenants and Tony Tummins. But it's very sad that the Welsh Government is going to force us to increase the rents and make some worse off than the members of the Senate. We must make sure that we help our tenants with compassion, and I'm sure that Jeff just said that we do. I would like to know exactly how many tenants have to use Welsh Government funding to top up the rent. I think he said 2/3. So it's only 1/3 of tenants are able to pay the rent, if I've understood correctly. If he can send me the figures, I would be very appreciative. Thank you, Mr. Leader. Thank you, Mary.
Yeah, it's always. I think it's always fair for me to stick up for Welsh Government, because I think that they're not forcing us to doing this. What they're saying is, you know, you can increase your rents up to 1.5% this year. All councils, I've spoken to all councils in North Wales, and they're all doing the same. Some of them are sort of planning to not go for the 1.5%. They're trying to use the £2 a lot more, the £2 a week increase. So the inflationary increase might sound less. But it's not, because there's going to be the plus £2, and we haven't got anybody who's going up more than 1.5%. Like I say, our average rent is £93 a week, so it's significantly less overall. And like I say, we're certainly, nobody's going to be evicted from a council house if they don't pay their rent. You know, we're working with all our tenants, and we're providing as much support as we can. It is 1/3 that don't get any support for the housing costs. The number of people in it may, as a result of this increase, because it may put more people into the benefit and entitlement category. But just to give you some reassurance, absolutely no. Can you hear me okay?
You're just slowing down.
You're breaking up a bit, Jeff. Yeah.
Just switch the screen off a minute, Jeff, please. Okay, keep going.
Yeah, no, just to say, you know, absolutely we'll support our tenants. There'll be nobody who will be evicted because of this, and we will absolutely support our tenants. And we've got repayment. We can't write arrears off, unfortunately, but, you know, we've got repayment plans that, you know, we're really just every case is different, but to really suit tenants and not put any pressure on anybody, any undue pressure on families.
Yeah, I'm pretty well assured, Jeff, in all the answers that you've given, or the support that you can provide for tenants in partnership with Citizens Advice, that we are well placed to provide the support required for them to deal with this. And that's been quite consistent in all your answers. Thank you for that. Okay, Glenn, please.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree with everybody else over the affordability. I mean, we're going to get hit at some point with people not being able to afford all the rents, everything. I agree with what Bobby Feely said and others, but we'll come back to that. The bit that concerns me the most above everything is on the impact assessment, where it says, as our rents are below other social landlords in the county, there is a fear that the poorer households would choose Denbighshire Housing as their landlord for this reason, and we would have a disproportionate amount of poorer households seeking housing. Really? We fear that poorer people are going to want to live in Denbighshire Housing? That's, you know, if we're trying to send messages to people about affordability and about housing, you know, and our housing department is excellent. You know, Jeff does an incredible job, and all his team, and I thank them for that. But we fear poorer people will want to come into our housing. Who wrote that? Thank you.
Yeah.
Statements. Well, Jeff, do you want to come back on that?
Yeah, I accept that. I mean, I think that the challenge with the wellbeing impact assessment is we update it every year. I do it with tenants, and we've updated it every year. There was a concern a couple of years ago now, so it's probably outdated, that comment. So I apologise that, you know, housing associations were getting very much into affordability assessments at pre-tenancy stage, and they were even talking about people not being eligible for a tenancy if it was felt they couldn't afford the tenancy. So we were really concerned about that, because we were never going to take an approach like that. And because our rents are less, people who are paying might think, well, do you know what, I'd rather have a council house because it's just as good, or the service is better, but it's slightly cheaper. I don't, you know, Glenn's right. I don't really think, you know, that people do think like that and get into that level of scrutiny of each social landlord's rent. But, you know, people have said, you know, I viewed a property by another housing association, but the council tenancy was much better condition. It was a much nicer house. So, you know, I apologise. Glenn's right there for picking on that point. You know, we'll make sure we reword that, I think.
Okay, that's good. Okay, is anybody else? No? Okay, thank you. Julian, can you come to the recommendations, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So recommendation 3.1, that the housing revenue account budget for 2021-22 as contained in Appendix 1 and the housing stock business plan as contained in Appendix 2 be adopted. 3.2, that rents for council dwellings be increased in accordance with the Welsh Government policy for social housing rents to an average weekly rent of £93.89 with effect from Monday the 5th of April 2021. 3.3, the Cabinet are asked to note the additional report, Appendix 3, on cost efficiencies, affordability and value for money prior to approving this rent increase. And 3.4, that the committee confirms it's read, understood and taken account of the wellbeing impact assessment in Appendix 4 as part of its consideration.
Thank you, Julian. That's been proposed. Will someone second that, please?
I'll second it, Leader.
Thank you, Richard. Okay, is there any cabinet member against these recommendations? No? Okay, so I take it that they've been moved by cabinet members. Thank you for that. Okay, do you want a 5 minutes break?
Yep.
Yeah, or 10 minutes probably. Back for 20 to 12.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yep. Okay. Welcome back. Have we all come back? All cabinet members back, are they? So we're waiting for cabinet members. Richard's here. Brian, Julian, Bobby, are you with us?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. Tony? Tony's not there yet. Who? Who held it back? No. Mark? I'm missing half the cabinet at the moment. Let me come back.
I'm here, Leader, but I've just lost the picture.
Okay, fine, Tony. Hill, are you with us now? No. Mark, are you with us? So there's two missing, yeah? Oh, are you? I thought I saw Richard's name. Are you with us, Richard? Right. Okay, there's 3 cabinet members. We'll just wait a minute or so for them to come back then.
I've got.
Have you had your vaccination yet, Leader?
Yeah, I'm just waiting. Brian, I'm just waiting for Richard, Mark. Richard's back. Okay,
Yeah.
there's only Mark and Hilditch now.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. No, have you had your vaccination, if you don't mind me asking, in this public place?
No, I haven't. I'm not
No.
at the list. No, I'm not. I'm far from being ready for that, Brian, unless you know something I don't.
No. I was trying to crack a cheap gag, wasn't I? Yeah, go on.
I would hope it would only be health and care workers and those over 80s by now, Brian.
Sorry, I missed that.
So it should only be health and care workers and the over 80s, neither of which fits the leader.
Thank you, Judith. Thank you, Chief Exec. I think Brian was suggesting something there and I tried to ignore it. Right, there's only Hilditch who hasn't joined, is there? Okay, well, we'll have to start anyway now. Well, who's here with it? Okay, we're all back. Right, agenda item 8, budget 2021-22, final proposals. Julian, please.
Thank you very much again, Leader. It doesn't need me to say that this has been an exceptionally difficult and broken up year. Not just because of COVID, but because of delays in being able to get advanced information on where we were likely to be placed and situated with regards to our settlement. The settlement was draft settlement was announced on the 22nd of December, and we're anticipating that the final settlement will be provided to us at the beginning of March. We held a budget session for members on the 21st of December. And at that session, Steve and I went through a number of significant pressures that we would have little alternative other than to meet. And those came to some £8.25 million of pressures. And there was also a further suite of pressures that, given an ideal world, we would like to meet, and depending on what the settlement provided us with. And that came to around about another £3 million. I'm not going to go through all of them, but I would just direct you to section 4.3 in the report, starting on page 152, going over to 153, and just pick up just a few of them. I always say this at this time of year about the impact of the council tax reduction scheme. You will no doubt remember that when the old council tax benefit was changed into the council tax reduction scheme some years ago and transferred into the revenue support grant, it was transferred in at that level and has never actually been increased. So it was at that time, it was around about £9 million that we were using for that. And each year since then, that has increased, which we have to fund ourselves. So the proposed increase for that is £350,000 on top of what we've put in previous years. We're now well in excess of £1 million that we're having to put in ourselves to top that up. There were a number of schools items there: inflationary pressures, investments in ALN, demographics, changes to the school budget formula on small schools. Those equate to an additional just over £3.25 million that would be put into the school's delegated budget. We then, as we have for a significant number of years, face real demand pressures in the area of community support services, adult social care, and it's proposed that we put an additional £2.4 million into that area, and an additional £750,000 million into education and children's services for the children's social care for out-of-county placements and recoupment of costs for that. Number of other slightly smaller pressures there. The impact of previous decisions we've taken. We've agreed to fund flood works and the growth bid. So that's putting in funding to be able to do that. There's also just under £390,000 that we're putting in order to fund potential borrowing to enable us to invest to get to achieving the carbon zero target by 2030. I realise this is going through its own process, but we put the amount in the budget to accommodate that. And you'll remember last year we put in some cash to assess the impact of the ash dieback disease. And we're proposing to actually put £250,000 permanent base budget into the budget as well. So that all comes to total pressures that we're able to actually deal with of some £9.9 million. Now, as I say, at the budget workshop, we went through a number of scenarios with regards to the RSG and what it was likely to be. Our assumption going in, because we'd had no indications at all, was that we were working on a zero flat base increase. Although we didn't really think that was going to be the case. We thought that it would be a positive increase, but we weren't sure what it was actually going to be. So it was prudent at that stage still to go with the zero. To have met all of those around about £11 million worth of pressures that we highlighted, we'd have needed somewhere in the region of 4% increase to RSG. In the end, the Welsh average on the draft settlement was 3.8%, and our net amount after taking into account transfers in is 3.6% increase. So it was on the higher end of the range that we were hoping for, but not quite at the level where we were able to meet all of those previous pressures. Which is why those of you who are at the budget session will see that the balancing figures where that shortfall has come from is in relation to the last bullet point on 4.3 there, which is the contingencies that we were putting in place in relation to COVID, Brexit, and any other contingencies. We have a significant number of unknowns, so it's only prudent that we should have a contingency, but we've reduced that to 683,000 to take into account the fact that the difference between the 3.6 we received and the 4% that we would have required to have received to have met the full list of pressures. So how are we proposing to actually address that funding? That's made up of a number of areas, which you'll see in section 4.4. The 3.6 settlement gives us just under £5.5 million of additional revenue. Then we went during the course of the year to all services and asked them, as per usual, to come up with their proposals, which were assessed by the budget board. And a number of those fell into the realm of increases in fees and charges. You should be all aware that a couple of years ago now, I think it was, we took through corporate governance and cabinet a policy which I'm cutting a 20-page document down into one line here now to appreciate, but essentially the main thrust of it was that we expected heads of service to annually look at all fees and charges, and where we had flexibility to increase them, they should be increased annually, at least in line with inflation, and with the aim of making whatever was being charged for as near as possible, if not actually to cost neutral to the authority. So that raised, doing that and correlating a number of those together came to £462,000. There was then another £690,000 which came from operational efficiencies identified throughout the year and within heads of service delegated authority. There was then 780,000 of proposals where there would be some change to service delivery. They're not necessarily cuts, but they may well be something that's actually being done in a different manner. You'll remember that 2 years ago, we put a 2% efficiency target for schools. Last year, we reduced that because we had a slightly better than anticipated settlement to 1%. And we're putting forward another 1% target to schools on that, which equates to some £733,000. But I'd just like to take you back to what I said a few moments ago. We are actually putting in an additional £3.27 million into the school's delegated budget. So if you net that down, that's an increase of £2.5 million actually going into school budgets. And then there was a slightly better position as well with regards to the council tax base. So essentially, more people have been paying council tax because of more properties than we'd put in our projections, which has garnered an extra £369,000. And so essentially, the balancing figure on that then becomes the usual knotty, thorny problem of council tax, which we obviously want to keep as low an increase as possible, particularly given the circumstances that people find themselves in this year more than any other with COVID. And the proposal that I'm putting forward today, and hopefully we'll go on to if colleagues agree, that will go on to council next week, is an increase of 3.8%. That compares with the 4.3% that we increased last year and the 6.35% the year before that. So at least the direction of travel is in the right direction, you could say, and that would generate the balancing figure of £2.1 million. So that's a very quick canter through. One of the other recommendations you will actually see in the report, just the other thing I wanted to pick up on, because of the late announcement of the final settlement, which will be after all local authorities will have set their council tax, and indeed the bills will be in the process of being printed. We're actually just putting in a caveat that should there be any changes between the draft and the final settlement, we're not anticipating there will be anything significant on that. Welsh Government have advised that that would be unlikely to be the case. But should there be any minor adjustments that we need to take into account, that Steve, in consultation with myself, would have the authority to utilise cash to mitigate whatever variance there was, up to a £500,000 limit. The one area where it potentially there could be a call upon that, and we don't know whether there will or there won't be, discussions are ongoing at the moment, I understand. There was quite probably the largest range of increases across Wales in terms of the RSG increase from around about 2% up to just shy of 6%. And some of those right at the bottom of the scale are lobbying heavily that a floor should be put in place, below which no authority will receive that increase. Whether that will be looked on favourably by Welsh Government, we don't know. But that potentially could have a small impact on us, because obviously the quantum will not change. So if it's divvied up slightly differently, then that would mean that the other authorities which weren't the recipient of a floor would actually have to reduce slightly to take that into account. But it wouldn't be a significant amount, but that's one area potentially, if that were brought in between now and the announcement of the final settlement, where we would have to utilise some cash just to balance that off. I think that's probably too much as far as most of you are concerned, but I think that's probably a very quick canter through where we are. Steve, did you want to pick up on anything that I either got wrong or that I've missed out? It's critical before we go to questions.
I don't think you've missed anything out or get anything wrong, Julian, as usual. The only thing I would just mention is obviously in the December presentation we went through the. Sorry, can you hear me?
You were starting to cut off, Steve.
Yeah,
You're better in the end.
I'll get rid of my video. There you go. Yeah, so we went through the process, and it's just a sort of a promise from me, really, that we'll have early engagement with Cabinet and Council on the process going forward for next year. Obviously, we're hoping it will be less COVID impacted next year, so we'll be able to start earlier. And just another thing to point out in the report, we are, and every council has done this in Wales, we have regular weekly meetings as Section 151 officers. We are assuming that a level of Welsh Government support will continue next year, even though they haven't made concrete announcements for COVID pressures. So that's, we're again, like we were in May, we're working in partnership with Welsh Government. This is very much a business as usual budget, and we're assuming that if the impact, as it seems likely, that if that impact continues, that we will continue to get financial aid from Welsh Government. So just two extra points there.
Okay, thank you both for that. I'll open up for questions for Cabinet members, please.
Okay, Leader, can I have a
Mark?
couple? Yeah.
Yes.
So obviously, when you read the figures, they are quite scary. So the shortfall originally was over 10 million, and I know we put some cash in to reduce that. You mentioned partnership working with Welsh Government, but even in partnership, and this isn't to have a moan, but the reality is, after years of cuts, we've had to fund a funding gap of 5 million. Now, surely, and a question for you, Leader, and Steve Gadd and the Chief Exec, there is a point when this becomes untenable. So I know we're dealing with this year's, but it can't sit comfortable how we have to deal with this year on year. So although we are working in partnership, how do we manage this moving forward? Because there must become a point where you can't deliver services. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Yeah, I'll just respond to that. This positive settlement, second year on the row, is really needs to be appreciated in terms of the situation that Welsh Government find themselves in, as do Westminster. But what's changed this year? Probably one of the benefits of COVID has been the interaction that we have had with ministers. I've been in meetings in LLJ where about 5 ministers have turned up to listen to our concerns or to share their plans, and they are better briefed about local government pressures than they have ever been. Where before we've relied on individuals from the LLJ possibly to refer our concerns, and then a conversation took place where we were not party to. All of a sudden we are having now robust conversations with ministers, nearly all the ministers, to highlight the challenges that we face. And I know that the 151 officers as well meet after the leaders have met on most occasions to share their concerns with ministers as well. So the dialogue has changed, and I think the situation as a consequence of that is a lot more positive than it was. That said, we do have an assembly election. It'll probably be in the spring, or not, or a bit later. And there might be a change of minister, which could have a significant impact. And the points that you raised, Mark, we could be back to where we were a few years ago. So I am comfortable with the dialogue that we've had this year and how Welsh governments have responded and reacted to the COVID situation. The unfortunate thing was for us all that the draft settlements didn't reach us until the 22nd of December. Now, that's not a complaint, that's a reality of what this COVID has created. And I do know that Steve Gadd and officers were working over Christmas to try and work out what the impact of that was and to get this report to us on time here today. So there have been consequences of that, but I think to have a positive settlement, yes, we need an awful lot more, as the report states. The pressures are very, very real and quite significant. And we would like to invest in an awful lot of the things, but in the context of the year that we've had, a positive settlement has to be appreciated.
Okay. We can just come back very quickly on that, leaders. some talk, and you've requested this, and Steve Gadd and Julian, about having budgets for 2 to 3 years. I think when it's like this, that's more and more important, even if they have to top it up in some way. So how are them talks going on, please, Leader or someone else?
It hasn't progressed as well as I would have liked, Mark. We have been consistently asking for 3-year budgets in order that we can plan. Steve or Julia might be able to answer clearer than me on this, but I'm not sure if it's been delayed this year, but there was an intention for Westminster to provide a 3-year budget. I don't know if that's been the case or not. I'll ask Steve to just clarify that.
Yeah, do you want me to come in there?
Yeah, go on, Steve.
Yeah, the original proposal was that there was going to be a comprehensive spending review that was delayed until September from the Chancellor, and then that got further delayed as the impact of COVID continued. And in the end, what was decided was that he announced, and that was on the 25th of November from memory. In the end, the Chancellor just announced the 1-year settlement. So basically, which is perfectly understandable in the circumstances, but it did scupper any hope of Welsh Government being able to give us a 3-year indication, because they haven't got a 3-year indication of their figures. So it's almost we need all those ducks in a row before Welsh Government can give us those things. Obviously, elections and stuff come into it as well, and the first term of a Welsh government, Welsh Assembly government would probably be the opportunity to do that. As soon as you get into those final years of a government, those any 3-year announcements they make might not hold any water, mightn't they? So I'd hope that the next 2 years, but I wouldn't. It is difficult for them, and it is difficult for the UK Treasury now as well. So yeah, I wouldn't hold our breath for any 3-year settlements going forward.
Okay, Judith, did you want to come in, please?
Yeah, thanks, Leader. Mark, just to return to your original point, you were talking about pressures on services and funding, and yes, as the Leader said, we did get a settlement from Welsh Government this year that was most welcome, and I think that's enabled us to fund most of our service pressures looking forward into 21-22. It may not cover some of the emerging pressures that emerge from COVID, for example, income loss, that I think either the lead member or Section 151 referred to earlier. So we don't know about that. The danger is in years to come, if we don't get 4 or 5% settlements, that won't enable us to stand still because of the growing pressures around social care, both adults and children's predominantly. And I'd have to say that at that point, there is definitely no more slack in the system. We would have to be looking at working with members to make some very difficult decisions were this level of increase not to be sustained. So that's my assessment of the situation.
Yeah, thanks for that. Okay, any other comments from Cabinet members? Questions, please? No? Okay, I'll open it up. Mary, please.
Thank you once again, Leader. Can I thank Julian for accepting the correction I made previously, especially with regards to the fire authority. As you know, I represent the county on there. It's the word charge that appears now rather than levy, but in the Welsh translation, the translator hasn't done it correctly. It's still there as levy ardoll. So I hope before this goes out officially that you will have corrected the Welsh version as well, please. But thank you very much, Julian, for his work, and the Treasurer as well. Thank you, Mary.
Yep, thank you. Once again, I see that we're asking our schools to save 1%. The year on year, we keep asking our schools to save money. They're going through an awful lot at the moment. They've been through an awful lot, throughout the whole of 2020. I don't think now is the right time to be asking them to sit down and find another 1% saving. There's enough on as it is. We should be increasing their budgets, not taking them away at this point. So on the one hand, we're investing in schools, and in the other hand, we're asking schools to save money. So can I just ask, is the money that we're investing in over new builds and refurbishing and things like that? Because it's clearly nothing to do with budgets. Again, it's one of those that, you know, we're increasing council tax. We've just been speaking about rents and all the other things that people are going to be paying just as people are getting poorer and poorer. Is this something that we can look at again and come up with something that's a bit more affordable to large parts of the community? Thank you.
Thanks, Glenn. Julian, do you want to respond to that, or to ask Hugh? Julian first, please.
Yeah, I mean, Hugh might want to come in specifically about the education issues in terms of schools. I think I just need to reaffirm that we're not suddenly. I just want to clarify that we're not suddenly asking schools to find this. The Schools Budget Forum, which we've been working through, have been aware that this was going forward for some considerable time, that this would be part of the budget proposal as it was last year, and they've obviously been working with individual schools to in order to be able to deliver that. I would also just like to reaffirm that yes, we are asking them to find a 1% saving. We asked all our other services to find a 4% saving. So, you know, we are showing schools a better position than we expect from other service areas within the council. And also, again, just to highlight, yes, we are asking them to save £730,000, but we're giving them an additional £3.27 million in this budget as well. So that the overall schools delegated budget will increase by around about £2.5 million as an overall net figure. But I don't know whether Hugh wants to go into a bit more detail on that one.
Yeah. Just to confirm that any proposals that we put before you have been through the School Budget Forum, which is obviously head teachers are on that and they sit on that. They accepted 2% last year. We gave them 1% last year in the end, and there is a net gain in the budget. However, I take on board what Glenn says, because we are in totally new waters here. We are now having to finance a blended learning offer for children, which is totally new to many of our workforce. We're having to make sure that we can fund all the COVID restrictions. We're going to face massive challenges with testing of children in schools and the costs. Something as simple as that you can't have a test in a room that has carpet. So therefore, it has to be a hard floor. There's so many regulations that the teachers and staff in schools having to work to. And what I'm mindful that we as an authority, and Julian and Steve, I know, are already on this, really link tight to any COVID-related funding that we can use in our schools to support, our main aim, which is to get back to face-to-face education, which is so imperative for our children. So there are at the moment costs that have incurred in schools that we have to absorb, but hopefully we will be able to offset some of that on Welsh Government and make sure that we're able to claim that, because I know Julian and Steve are looking on that. So there's nothing before us here that is not comfortable with head teachers. It's been through the ringer of Budget Forum, and it has the support as we stand.
Thank you for that. Steve, did you want to come in at all?
Sorry, Hugh. I was just going to try and come back on Glenn's second point.
Okay, you come on the second point, and I'll get Steve after.
Yeah, which was the more general one about the overall package, I suppose. Basically, as we said, there are only two ways that we can actually address this. We can either reduce what we put into the budget in terms of the pressures and not meet some of those pressures. But having said that, that's most of them are unavoidable in any event, and we would have to meet those. Or we can reduce or increase or do something different with council tax. That ultimately is the balancing figure. My own personal viewpoint, as I think is probably fairly well known, is I don't believe we should be charging residents a penny more than we absolutely need to be able to deliver the services in council tax, and that's even more the case given the additional hardships that people are facing as a result of COVID. So it's no light thing that I do when I make a recommendation to put the council tax up by 3.8%, because I fully understand what impact that will have on many of our residents. Offset against that is the fact that were we to come in with a lower level, that would mean that we would have to, as I say, either not meet some of the pressures, which isn't really realistic, or make additional cuts to services. It's always a trade-off, and I believe that what I'm putting before you today is the best way of, in terms of a package of addressing measures having the least negative impact on our residents.
Okay, thank you. Steve, did you want to add to what was said?
Yeah, just very quickly, I was just going to answer the direct point from Councillor Swingler about the schools increase is for revenue spend. It's the modernising education budget is completely separate, and we have got pressures in for that to pay for the potential borrowing for investment in school buildings, etc. But the items in there are specifically for schools, and they're really split between inflation, demographic change, which allows us to keep that per pupil spend honest, if you like, so we're not making a cut sort of secretly. It's we're giving the money for more pupils that they have, so that's in there. And then there's these two specific items which have come out of the SIFT process that myself and Geraint are involved in all the way through the year, when schools have to give us their 3-year budget figures, even though we don't get 3-year figures from Welsh Government, but we do our best with it. So there were a couple of themes that came out of that, and those pressures have come from that because we think they'd really help schools with some fundamental problems that they have around ALN, funding ALN, and some of the small schools budgets, which obviously now that they're going to continue being in existence, we need to help them because some of them are struggling. So that's going to focus on the small schools. So I'm hoping it's a balanced approach. We have on the inflation side for teachers assumed 2%, which I know regionally is probably on the high side of some assumptions. Some authorities are actually just saying 0% because that's what the Chancellor indicated in the autumn. I don't think that'll be the case in Wales, and specifically for teachers. So we are actually pitching it at 2%, and we'll give that budget to schools, which hopefully gives them a bit more, confidence going forwards that their pay pressures will be funded by the council.
Okay, thank you for that. Next question, please. Paul, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not going to get into all the ins and outs of the politics of who's not funding who and all the rest of it. I've just got a question on the figures. I'm not brilliant on figures, so you have to bear with me. Reading through the papers, we have a funding shortfall of 1,327,000 or 13,027,000, I'm not sure, but the figure of 1,327 is a shortfall. There's a comment about it only being £1 a week extra now, but over the last 10 years, that small increases have added up to about £500 a year extra for most people. Band D council tax is set to be just short of £1,500. On the Wales average income, that's about 3 weeks' wages for most people, which is quite a lot. And Appendix 2 shows the various possible increases or no increases at all. One possibility is for a 2.5% increase that would raise 1,403, which is actually 70 more than the shortfall. So why are we going for 3.8? Well, there's a possibility we could go the 2.5 and still meet the shortfall and make a profit. But I've also got a further question, but I'm not sure if I'm allowed to ask it, so I'll check first. We had an email yesterday with the minutes of the governance body for Denbighshire Leisure Limited. I'd like to ask a question about that. Am I allowed to do that in a public meeting?
Hang on there, Paul. I'm just looking to Gary here.
The governance board is part 2, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't know what the document is that you're referring to, but
It was the minutes of a meeting.
Yeah, of whose meeting?
Of the Denbighshire Leisure Limited governance body from December 16th last year.
That's not a public meeting, so I would suggest not having sight of the document in front of me.
Right, I won't ask that question now. I'll ask that privately at some point.
Gary, I think it's the the last board meeting was the 16th of December, I think.
Yeah, that's the one.
Well, they're not published, so again, without knowing what the question, I
It's
can't
about
really
5
give
minutes,
advice on
basically.
I can't really give advice on whether you can ask a question when I don't know what the question is and I don't know what the information is that the question's based on. But that information may not be in the public domain, so it's probably best to ask it privately.
Okay, I'll ask that privately. So I'll remain with why can we not go to 2.5%, which would still meet the shortfall and provide a bit of extra money on top?
Sorry, Paul, can you just clarify where you're getting that shortfall figure from? Because it's not the shortfall figure that's in the report.
Oh, I've got no idea now. I've got so many bloody documents open.
Because the shortfall figure in the report before we start addressing council tax is a funding gap of 5.167 million, and then we take off the various categories as in 4.4, and the balancing figure is the requirement is the 2.132 million, which equates to 3.8%. So if we had council tax at a lower rate than 3.8%, that would mean that we would have to make either additional cuts or not meet all of those pressures, as I indicated earlier.
Well, the 1.32 is the figure you've just said that I'm talking about.
Julian, can I...
2.132 million.
Is there a confusion about which year? Because in Appendix 1, are you talking about the 1.327 million figure in Appendix 1?
It's in Appendix 2, I'm sure it is.
No, the shortfall. Appendix 2 is the council tax.
Appendix 2 is the council
sensitivity.
tax.
There is
Well,
a
in that
figure.
case, like I said to begin with, my grasp of figures is not brilliant, so I've obviously got the wrong end of the stick there somewhere.
I can't see the figure you're quoting, but I mean, if you want to come back to me, I'll
come back. I'll check my figure. It'll come back in a minute. Or I'll come back outside.
But the actual fact of the matter is that, as I say, the council tax essentially is that balancing figure, and the shortfall that requires to meet is to balance all of what's in the proposals is 2.132 million, which equates to 3.8%.
Well, it looks as if there's a figure missing off my columns. I've got 1.32. I haven't got 1.3. I'll check the tables I've got here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, just check your figures on that one, Paul.
Yep. Okay. Thanks, Paul. Yeah.
Meirig, what did you bod?
Meirig, you have come in once. I'll go round. When you respond, could you please say where you're speaking from? Because figures are being provided to us, but you're not referring to which page or which part of the report, which means I don't know where you're up to in the report. To be fair, Meirig, that should be fair to everyone, to the people asking the question and those responding to the question. Anyone else? No one else.
You do this, but Paul, have you got any clarity on where you're at with the figures? Last chance.
I'm just going through all the documents I've got open at the moment, so no, it'll take me a while. I'll email Julian privately when I found it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
please. If you wouldn't mind doing that, Paul. Okay, we're not going to get any further than that one. Okay,
No.
There are no more questions on this? Right, okay. Julian, can you come to the recommendations, please?
I can indeed, Leader. So 3.1 is to note the impact of the draft local government settlement for 2021-2022. 3.2 is the Cabinet supports the proposals outlined in Appendix 1 and detailed in Section 4 and recommends them to the full Council in order to finalise the budget for 2021-2022. 3.3 is to recommend to Council the average council tax rise of 3.8% proposed. 3.4 is to recommend to Council if authority is delegated to the Head of Finance and Property in consultation with the lead member for Finance to adjust the use of cash included in the budget proposals by up to 500,000 if there is movement between the draft and final settlement figures in order to allow the setting of council tax in a timely manner. And 3.5 is the Cabinet confirms it's read, understood and taken account of the wellbeing impact assessment. So I'd move those.
That's been moved. Will someone second those, please?
I'll second them, Leader. Happy to.
Thank you, Richard. Are there any Cabinet members who cannot support those proposals? No? No abstentions? Okay, they've been moved by all cabinets. Thank you all for that. Agenda item 9, finance reports, Julian.
If you've not already been financed out with the last item, this of course refers to my normal monthly reporting in terms of the current year's finances. I'm actually not going to go into too much detail with regards to this. There hasn't been a significant amount of movement since I reported last month. The forecast overspend is now at 2.242 million. Again, usual caveat, that works on the assumption that no additional funding will be coming in from Welsh Government, and we know that's not going to be the case, but obviously until we receive it, we can't count that. Just a couple of points I'd like to pick up. In terms of the capital projects, I haven't referred to them for some months. The one I particularly want to pick up on is in relation to the Queen's Market project. Since the report was written, I'm now pleased to confirm that we have received, I don't know whether we've received the actual offer, but I know we've received confirmation from Welsh Government that they've agreed our submission for an additional around about £1.5 million, which now means that that particular project, at least phase one of that project, is now fully funded. The demolition will be starting in the next few weeks, and the planning applications will be submitted. And I'll just add that the planning application, I think I'm right, Graham, in saying this, is being submitted for all phases of the project, not just for phase one. So in case you see that and wonder why we're submitting it for the entire project. Most of the other capital items you'll see there are all proceeding in line with what we would expect and what I've been reporting for a number of months. And I suppose the only other point, not directly related to this, but it's in relation to the various grant regimes that have been in place from Welsh Government that we've administered over the last 10 months or so. In Wales as a whole, the amount of money paid out by local authorities this week exceeded £1 billion. And we've actually paid out the best part of £52 million in those grants to our businesses. So I think that is testament to the work of our Revs and Bens team, and I'd just like to formally thank them in this setting for all the work that they've been putting in above and beyond the call of duty. All our staff have been doing that, but I think I'd be remiss if I didn't actually thank them for what they've done with regards to that. I don't think there's anything else that particularly has changed since last month's report. So I think I'll just go to any questions the members may have, unless Steve wants to add anything.
No, I don't know. I haven't got anything to add, Julian.
Okay, thank you both. Any questions or comments from cabinet members on this?
Just one quick one for me, Leader, please.
Mark, yes.
Yeah, it's just, obviously you're talking about the support for businesses, and it's been fantastic. And when I've contacted Steve Gard, Julian or Paul Barnes, the response has been great, positive and prompt. But businesses have been closed now for a couple of weeks. I know there's, so the question is there any new money on the horizon for support? Because people have had no income now. I know you're mindful of this, and so it's not old money. Is there any new money because people are struggling and they're still closed? Any updates would be appreciated about.
Okay, well,
I mean, Steve may well want to come in with regards to that, but Welsh Government hadn't actually given, for the last set of rounds, because I have been asked this myself, and I've asked the team about what period the grants that have been paid to date actually covers for, and there hasn't actually been a cut-off date. The assumption sort of is that it's till the 29th of this month, on the grounds that was when the original lockdown was announced until. Obviously, that it will be reviewed, although I wouldn't anticipate that things would be likely to change. So I'm assuming, and it is an assumption because nothing has been announced to the best of my knowledge yet, that another round of funding would be made available after that date. But you know, we just have to wait for Welsh Government to make those announcements.
Yeah, Steve, did you want to add to that?
Exactly the same understanding, really. Welsh Government are clear that the funding they've announced is for the period of lockdown that they've confirmed, and they would look to help, but obviously nothing's confirmed. So as soon as we get anything, we'll send things out to both Cabinet and Council.
Yep, that's good, clear. Yeah, Mark, any other comments, questions? No. Any other members? Meirig, please.
Thank you once again. Just to thank, if I may, to thank Julian for correcting and updating Appendix 4. It's very clear. And the Queen's Market in Rhyl, that has been updated. So I'd like to thank him for accepting the proposal I made. Thank you very much, Meirig. Bruce, just a quick question about the Queen's Market. Just to get it clear in my mind, it says there additional 2.5 million subject to formal confirmation from Welsh Government, I believe that is.
Are we talking about the same funding?
Sorry, probably I should have clarified. Welsh Government originally allocated, or provisionally allocated, £5 million in £2.5 million tranches. We've been paid the first one, and we're awaiting confirmation that, although it's just a sign off on the second £2.5 million. So that £2.5 million, I believe, has also been confirmed now. But there was a shortfall, even allowing for the additional money that we put into the project. And it's that additional round about £1.5 million that I was referring to that's just been confirmed now.
So
sorry
that's over and above
that.
the, so that's over and above the additional 2.5.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Because we'd already budgeted that 2.5 in, even though we hadn't actually received the confirmation for it.
Yeah. I understand.
Yeah. Neb arall?
No one else? No.
On this, please.
Yes, as soon as I can just go back and find it. Yep, okay. 3.1, the members note the budget set for 2020-21 and progress against the agreed strategy.
Okay, seconder for that.
Again, Leader, I'm happy to second.
Thank you, Richard. Is there any Cabinet member against the recommendation? No, everybody's okay with that. And the final agenda item for today, agenda item 10, is the Cabinet Forward Work Plan. Gary, could you just take us through this, please?
Yeah, just for members' benefit, the next meeting's on the 16th of February, and there's a fairly lengthy agenda. I'm not sure that the contract procedurals report will be ready for the 16th of February. It needs to go to Corporate Governance Committee before it comes here, and I don't think it's made the Corporate Governance agenda for this month. So that will probably need to be slipped to a future date. But I'm not aware of anything else that's not coming.
Okay, is there anything lead members want to add to that? No. Okay, that's it. That's it. I think we got to the end, have we? Oh, Meirig. Sorry, Meirig.
I have raised my hand. I'm concerned about section 6, the next meeting. Can somebody send me the information which committees you've contacted with regards to the change to the naming and numbering of streets, because I can't remember it coming in front of the Welsh steering group. So not now, but if somebody could send me an email to give me the information. It's been to the Welsh committee, says Councillor Hugh Hilditch. I remember having a discussion with Anne Emrys will remember, and Davis was there. Can you remember this, Emrys?
This was delayed work. This went through the committees and scrutiny at the back end of 2019.
Yeah.
2019? Yes.
Yes, quite a while ago. If you can send me information to me, I would be very grateful. We'll make sure that you send the last reports discussed with members to you. I think that's the best way of dealing with that, Mary. Yes, I can see that the report was under Emma Jones as the officer. I will send her an email and ask her to send copies of the reports to Councillor Mary Claude David. Did you hear that, Mary? So copies are on the way to you. Thank you very much. Anybody else? No one else.
Comment for today's cabinet. Can I thank you all for that? Stay safe and see you next month. Diolch yn fawr.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Bye, everybody.
Bye, members.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye all. Bye bye.
Bye.